Pablo Rodriguez is expected to resign as leader of the Quebec Liberal Party, the Parti Québécois, are leading the polls there. Do you have any plans to maybe take over his role and save the country from a referendum?
No, that I have a lot of things on my plate to build the strongest economy in the G7.
If the Conservatives want the truth, we'll tell them the truth.
Speech yesterday from the Prime Minister really freaked these Conservatives out because they saw the ambition in that speech. And not only did they see it in that speech today, as the Prime Minister stood with the Premier, investing in new nuclear to ensure the jobs of today and the future, they know that
the only thing that's revolting are those answers.
Speaker, we will take no lessons from these Conservatives. Trust me on that.
The minister didn't write the Prime Minister's speech yesterday because it wouldn't have bored and depressed to tears.
It's really hard to follow, isn't it, Mr. Speaker?
All of those poor students stuck in that room. There he spoke about how they would have to sacrifice more and that it would take time to reverse all of the misery that has built up over the last 10 years. Mr. Speaker, young people want to have homes. They want to have jobs. They want to have hope. They want a budget that is affordable so they can have a life that is affordable. Will the Prime Minister introduce that budget so that Canadians can restore the promise of their country?
And we decide what comes next.
Know that this government has their back and we will continue to do this. There's going to be a powerful statement for the young people of Canada.
Deficits are driving inflation. The more Liberals spend, the more it costs Canadians at the grocery store. 25% of Canadians are using food banks because they can't afford to eat. So when will the Prime Minister finally get his inflationary deficits under control so Canadians can put food on the table?
Mr. Speaker, Conservative members pretend to care about food insecurity, but then they call feeding children garbage.
Now, Mr. Speaker, what's garbage was that answer?
Did the Prime Minister see the ad before it went out?
Of course there are too many people living in poverty in Canada, but there are significant initiatives being put in place by this government.
Being serious means being honest.
Mr. Speaker, the grand reveal has been
Canada's economy is in fact growing, Mr. Speaker.
Christmas time, will he do the right thing, get rid of this tax so Canadians can eat?
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker.
Hey, welcome. We got sound check. Check. Yeah, we got sound. Outstanding. Welcome to the in-between. In between the naps, in between the no answer periods, where obviously there's not much going on in relation to Parliament, but there is still much going on. The kleptocratic Liberal Party may not be in Parliament during Christmas break, but that doesn't mean they aren't on a constant campaign of gaslighting. So in the meantime, welcome to our show. It's going to be a short one. Well, short as can be. We're going to be going through a list. But before we get to that, I'd like to thank all my subscribers and followers on Rumble and YouTube. We are broadcasting on 3 platforms, X, Rumble, and YouTube. The chat is up, so feel free to ask us anything. And comments drive the algorithm if I'm not driving it down with my words. So if you're watching this on Rewind, please leave us a comment. You'll probably get an answer. So let's get on with this. Liberals out there constantly, whether it's on Twitter or a few times they're speaking to reporters, whenever they're dropping hints in there, they're trying to convince Canadians that they only have their best interests. After a decade of accumulating over $1 trillion in debt, with nothing to show for it except for $10 million an hour in interest debt charges, just to keep up with our interest payments, just to keep the debtors at bay. But that's before the added deficit from the 2025 fall budget. Yeah, it's already bad. Before that, it's only going to get worse. The more money we borrow, the less our dollar's worth, the more everything is going to cost. And jobs, industry, and workers continue to flee Canada as they realize working and living in Canada under the Liberal Party is like living in a communist shithole. run by people who want full control of everything, including your thoughts and your religion. It's the worst Christmas in my lifetime, as I fully expected it to be under this self-enriching liberal government run by and headed by Mark Carney. I asked Grok to give me the top 10 abuses of power by Mark J. Carney, and it called me biased. And this is what it spit out. So we will go through this list, and after that, I think it might be done for a show. So let's go to the list. There. Sorry about that. Still trying to work out the bugs. It shifted me to a different scene, go to the different sources, and then you go to hit pause. Next thing you know, you're hitting pause on the wrong thing. So that was our first item there. Let me go to my list. Carney linked firm military contracts fiasco. Well, apparently there was some financial manipulation and ethical violations. In May of 2025, an audit revealed that $157 million in waste in a military contract with a firm tied to Carney's past, involving procurement violations. Critics allege insider favoritism, manipulating defense spending amid ethical concerns carried over from previous scandals. So, before we go to the list, here we are. Here's you have the story by Black Rocks. And now that's better, now that you can actually see what I'm seeing. Sorry about this. Still trying to work out the bugs. At least you got some sound. Well, Army contractor fails audit, and Black Rocks broke this story, but this isn't a news story at all for any of us who served in the military, because Brookfield has been involved ever since the Liberals got back in. And when the Liberals were out before, guess what? Before Harper came back in, Brookfield was involved in running stuff for the military. Liberals get back in, next thing you know, Brookfield is back at it again. They were managing a lot of the administration around the moves that military personnel had to do, doing your claims and all that, and they quickly got a reputation to be known as Crookfield. And so anytime somebody needed to do a move or anything, ended up dealing with them. It used to be that all this stuff was handled by a clerk in the military. But over the years, progressives have completely destroyed the military. In fact, they can never be happy what is the status quo. They always have to change. So that was the big inflection in the 90s. Change, change, change. They amalgamated a bunch of trades together. And when it came to the administrative trade, they amalgamated all their different people together into one so they could have an all singing, all dancing trade person. Yes, they used to segregate. One would be in finance, another one would be in this type of administration, another one might be in legal administration, but they needed to be specified in these areas because there was a lot of paperwork. And then I said, oh, pish posh, it's not that important. Let's just bring it all together. And then, of course, nobody could really do their job that effectively anymore. So the supervisors ended up having more burden. And then, of course, this creates a crisis that needs a solution. And what was the solution? We need contractors. And next thing you know, $157 million of abuse by Brookfield. And guess who's connected to that? Oh, yes, Mark D. Carney. All right, so is there anything more on this story? Yes, there is. So in 2025, the reports emerged detailing this information, contractor failure, Brookfield Global Relocation Services. Impact on personnel, approximately 12,000 Canadian Armed Forces members had a negative impact on military morale. So like I said, everybody hated to get posted in the first place because it's a move. right? You're disrupting. If you're married, well, there you go. It's disrupting the family. Your spouse has got to find a new job. Kids got to go to new schools. You got to do a house hunting trip. You got to coordinate with the movers to move everything around. You're going to a new job. It's a really stressful situation. And then you got to deal with Crookfield. Outstanding. Contract details. Well, intended to manage the logistics and relocation services, but cited for significant administrative and service mishaps. So many stories of stuff gone wrong on people's moves in relation to this stuff. But of course, you know, the only way you're going to get that information is if you try to do some freedom of access of information to the actual complaints that were put through the military. Good luck getting that. In broader context, spending surge, Carney government announced a significant increase in military spending to meet the 2% GDP. And he's probably happy about that. Well, it's all the interest, financial interest that he still has in Brookfield, because he didn't get rid of any of them, right? He just gave them over to an ethics screen, apparently. He knows what's in there, but apparently there's a screen, right? And the screen works this way. There's not people standing by and walking around listening to Carney, whatever he says, right? They expect Carney to tell them, I think there might be an ethical violation here because I own some interests somewhere down the line that might, you know, make some money from this policy decision that I'm making. And then the ethics screen people would say, okay, Mr. Prime Minister, let's look at that. Or they might just say, well, pish posh. No, you're overreacting. We don't see a problem at all. But it's still to the point where Carney has to come up forward first and say, hey, I think this is an ethics screen violation. That's how this thing works. Then, of course, because it's all personal, right? We don't get to find out when he goes forward and says to the ethics screener, we think there might be a policy issue here. So it's up to him. We don't know when he does it, but apparently it's all ethical. Alrighty then. What's the next story? Yes, and also related to contractor situation going on with the military. Of course, as you know, Liberals have been doing everything they can to screw this part up. So let's make sure we got some sound on this.
Well, it's now October 7th, and both our Air Force and allies are waiting to know where the program stands. Which leads us today, 15 years after Conservatives announced the original F-35 purchase, beginning our study on the Auditor General's June report. A report showed this program, which was projected to cost $19 billion in 2022, has now skyrocketed to a minimum of $33.2 billion, a 57% increase before a single jet has been delivered. It is my conclusion that the mismanagement of this program has come not only at a massive cost to taxpayers, but with the cost to our country's security and sovereignty. So with that, Lieutenant General, as Commander of the Royal Canadian Air Force, do you believe the management of this program and consistent backtracking to date has left your service members in the best position possible to defend our country and its sovereignty?
Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. So as the Commander of the Air Force, I am committed to ensuring that the members of the Royal Canadian Air Force are trained, organized, and equipped to be able to meet the demands that the Government of Canada requires of them. In so doing, I have to focus on things that are within our control, and the elements of what we're dealing with as we implement this very important and significant shift for the RCAF in terms of the advancement in technology and the advancement in our ability to safeguard Canadians and Canadian sovereignty is extremely important. So we are very, very focused on ensuring that we have all of the elements in place and as timely a fashion as possible, and we're working very closely with all of our partners within the Department of National Defence and in the other government departments to ensure success.
Ms. Hogan, a similar question to you. In your opinion, has the management of this program given you the confidence that our country is equipped to handle such a large increase in NATO commitments without more cost overruns, delays, and mismanagement?
I think what our audit found here was that there were some cost increases that were well within D&D's control and others that were outside of their control. Foreign exchange fluctuation, global demand for munitions, inflation, those were all outside of D&D's control. It would have happened no matter what jet was chosen. I do think that national defense has some difficulties in moving forward on projects. I think that all parties should agree on what the Canadian Armed Forces needs. And then we should allow the public service and the Canadian Armed Forces to deliver.
Well, I have to tell you from experience that whatever tools the military was given, we always attempted to deliver. But nowadays, I keep telling everybody, nobody should be joining the Canadian Armed Forces anyway, because you will be required to take three jabs of the COVID-19 vaccine if you want to go in operations. After everything they know about this thing, you still need 3 jabs to do your job there. It's insane, these people. And of course, all the people that have been injured by the jab that have been told in the Canadian Forces to stay quiet, not to say anything, under orders. No, you can't talk about it. Their own medical system won't recognize the injuries. Veterans Affairs will not recognize the vaccine injuries, and it's too late for them to apply to the failed vaccine injury support program. So all this is constantly going on in the background of bad morale situation, let alone the fact that I have to deal with Crookfield. I have to deal with the Liberal government still abusing Canadian Armed Forces members and gaslighting them, telling me, oh, it's safe and effective. No, your injuries are not caused by that. Not at all. No, not at all. Yes, well, before we get to yes, okay, so let's move on to our next item. And, come on. Oh, now I'm figuring it out. Next time I'll have to do separate intros if I do this again. It's a lot easier than trying to move around the whole intro file. All right, so the second intro is dealing with the appointment of ministers. Well, what was the problem with appointments of ministers? Promotion of scandal-tainted ministers. Ethical violations. In June 2025, Carney promoted ministers linked to the $64 million Arrive Can scandal. That's why we call it a Arrive scam. Despite procurement rule breaches confirmed by Auditor General, this is viewed as perpetuating corruption from the Trudeau era of using office to shield allies instead of ensuring accountability. But I always like to remember, whenever people start talking about money that the government is wasting and all that, we always have to remember how many hours does this actually cost, right? So it was $64 million. So that's about 6.5 hours of debt interest that the Liberals have accumulated, right? Because we are paying $10 million an hour in debt interest charges from the massive debt that the Liberals have accumulated over the past 10 years, $1 trillion plus in debt that the banks, the bondholders are charging us in interest payments every single hour, $10 million. So this scam, the Arrive scam, the money that they wasted on this ridiculous scam, cost us now 6.5 hours worth of debt. That's how bad it is right now. All these scams, if you wrap them all up, they're hardly worth anything compared to the amount of money that we have to pay in interest from the money that the Liberals have spent into oblivion to help themselves and their friends. And this was almost as bad during the last election, but all the old bozos out there said, oh no, Trump's scary man. Right, so let's see what they have to say about the Auditor General.
Well, it's now October 7th, and both our Air Force and allies are waiting to know where the program stands. Which leads us today, 15 years after Conservatives announced the original F-35 purchase, beginning our study on the Auditor General's June report. A report showed this program, which was projected to cost $19 billion in 2022, has now skyrocketed to a minimum.
Yes, well, we're just really repeating the same things before. There we go. There's a rate file.
Mr. Speaker, these Liberals should not be dodging accountability. They want to hide their scandals from Canadians, but the Auditor General report is very, very clear. This Liberal government ignored the rules and allowed insiders to profit to the tune of $64 million. Wow. The Liberals have shown a complete disdain for hardworking Canadians by promoting the very same ministers who engaged in the cronyism and corruption. Why should wasteful Liberal politicians get promoted while Canadian taxpayers get a $64 million bill?
The Honourable Minister for Government Transformation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd just like to note that we've implemented the measures recommended by the Auditor General in previous reports as well as internal audits. We have revoked the security clearance of GC Strategies. We have terminated all contracts with GC Strategies. We've barred GC Strategies from future contracts with the Government of Canada. We've taken legal action against GC Strategies. We've referred cases to the RCMP because, Mr. Speaker, we will never tolerate misconduct from our suppliers or their subcontractors. Thank you.
Yes, but to this date, nobody's really been held accountable. We'll do this, we'll do that. They're always talking about stuff they're going to do, but do they actually get to do anything? I don't know. I don't think so. It never seems to turn out that way. Now, of course, when it comes to holding their own ministers accountable for past actions, what do Liberals do? Oh, this is what they do.
Minister, and are sitting as ministers right there, right now. Wow. Canadians are incensed by these same old Liberal ministers continuing in their corrupt ways. A simple question for their Prime Minister. When are Canadians going to get their money back?
The Honourable Minister for Government Transformation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We will always protect the integrity of our procurement process, which is why we've implemented recommendations from the Auditor General from past reports, such as increased transparency, strengthening oversight, clarifying the roles, the responsibilities across departments. We will always hold bad actors to account, which is why, Mr. Speaker, we've taken legal actions against GC Strategies. We've referred cases to the RCMP. We will always protect the integrity of our procurement process.
The Honourable Member for Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies.
That answer doesn't cut it for Canadians struggling to pay their bills in record numbers. These old Liberals have turned a ride scam into a masterclass in rewarding failure and corruption. The old ministers responsible for this scam are the same old ministers sitting over there as cabinet ministers right now. These same old ministers are ignoring the rules, allowing their insiders to get rich with taxpayers' hard-earned money. Why do corrupt Liberal ministers keep getting promoted and Canadians keep getting the bill?
That's a good question. The Honourable Minister of Government Transformation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me be absolutely clear. We will never tolerate misconduct from our suppliers or their subcontractors, which is why we've taken legal action against GC Strategies. We've referred cases to the RCMP. We've barred them from contracts.
So you'll only get the same canned answer over and over again. But when it comes to actual results, you never get any until, of course, the opposition has to put an order of paper in demanding answers to questions, and then they actually maybe perhaps get a question if it's not already redacted. It's the way they're running their show. All right, let's go to the next top 10. Climate policy backtrack. Well, what's going on here? So in 2025, faced a backlash, right? Because of the MOU. And of course, the MOU was designed basically, again, to gaslight Canadians. Oh, look at all the stuff we promised we're going to do. Remember April 28th, the election leading up to that date from March? Carney kept saying, we're going to build faster than you've ever seen, like speeds never before seen, not since the last time we had a big crisis on the planet. Oh, vote for me, I'll make stuff happen. And here we are into Christmas, and nothing's happened, right? Except, of course, spending more money and making his friends richer. And of course, he managed to piss off his climate crazies within the party because it's an absolute cult, complete religion, right? So any talk whatsoever of saying that humans are more important than the planet drove these other people crazy, like Guilbeault, the Hans Gruber of climate change, the man who's already been convicted of his convictions, was the first one to say, I'm out of here. I can't take this anymore. You don't care about the planet. That's right. Maybe it's time to start caring about Canadians. This whole carbon scam, if it is even true, which I don't believe that it is, because the proof is in the pudding that the more carbon dioxide you have, the greener your plants are, the more your plants are greener, the more they absorb, right? It's plant food. It's a noble gas. It's not a pollutant. And the fact that you think you can capture it, well, one volcano and you're SOL. Why is there not a volcano tax? No, you can't tax volcanoes, but apparently you can tax a noble gas. And that's what they're doing. And apparently the religion has found their God. Oh, let us save the planet by sucking all the CO2. Ridiculous. It's not going to save anything, except, of course, a lot of money for certain rich people that all seem to be associated with the liberals because everyone else is poor, because they're grabbing everyone else's money to pay for the scam to feed their religion, their absolute religion. And of course, anything against their religion, oh, well, that makes it sacrilege. And that started tearing the Liberal Party apart. Completely apart. Because you can't be pulling carbon out of the ground and then use it to make humanity better. The only thing that's actually taken us out of the dark ages has been our access to energy. The more energy we have, the more relaxed things could be. But it's strange that all these people on the liberal side that are so anti-energy, that are so anti-oil, none of them have given up the perks that this cheap energy has provided them, have they? No. No, they continue to live like everyone else as if these perks are valuable to them. So what's their plan? The plan is to make energy so unaffordable that you can't spend it to keep their carbon emissions down so that you starve to death and then die off. And then, of course, the planet is saved because there's no more humans on it. Except, of course, of the rich industrialists who can just pay. They can pay for whatever climate crime that you seem to have in order for them to do their businesses. Oh, wait, that doesn't work anymore, does it? That's right, because industry after industry is leaving Canada. Industry after industry has decided to leave those same countries that try to do the same climate crazy stuff. Like's happened in the UK. Their economy's destroyed. And like's happened in Germany. Germany's, I think, is finally coming to its senses and realize that, oh my God, this whole green scam thing we went down, people are freezing. We can't heat our people in the wintertime. So what shall we do? Oh, we should get, we can't say we were wrong. That would make us hypocrites. That's why everything on the far left is imploding. And that's why his attempt to gaslight Canadians into thinking, oh, we will build your pipeline. No, they're not building anything. Pierre Partly have called them on it. Okay, you really want to build a pipeline? Everybody vote. Let's vote in this part of the bill that says, hey, this is part of the MOU. Why not? Let's proclaim it. Of course, they couldn't do that, could they? Nope, he called them out, and he proved them wrong. I think it's time to go to the next top 10. Get this in here. Here we go. Ah, yes. What happened there with the leadership race? Seems like everything was predetermined, wasn't it? Oh yes, it's more in the MOU. I think we've said everything we can on that. The leadership race was kind of crazy because it seemed like they went out of their way ahead of time to crown Carney, and we know they did this. But during the election campaign, if everybody remembers these buttons that some insiders had created, yes, that's because this now goes to the question of what is the tone inside the Liberal war room that people are pulling out stunts like this, whereby they would arbitrarily create fake buttons to try to link the Conservative Party to the Republicans. Why do they do that? Well, because they're desperate. That's why they had to convince all Canadians that the last election was based on hating Donald Trump and hating anyone who liked Donald Trump or hating anyone who was loosely connected to Donald Trump. Okay, I'm seeing we're having some CPU lag issues here, and I'm trying to shut down something causing it. Not having any luck. Hang on, folks. It's taking a while here.
And responded by saying, we learned that a Chinese-linked malicious WeChat campaign against Chrystia Freeland was alerted. This was also happening on Friday. So you can see the National Post headline here, which is that China is basically trying to interfere with the Liberal leadership race. We've been warning about this potentially happening on the show for weeks now, and here we see that it actually has happened. So the Ministry of Democratic Institutions put out a statement on Friday as follows. It says, Rapid Response Mechanisms Canada detects informational operation targeting a candidate for the leadership campaign of the Liberal Party of Canada. And then we learned that it was Chrystia Freeland. Basically a bunch of targeted messages that were seen by apparently millions of Canadians, 3 million Canadians, that were not true. I don't know exactly what they were saying, but Freeland responded by saying, responding to the revelation on X, she wrote, I will not be intimidated by Chinese foreign interference. Having spent years confronting authoritarian regimes, I know firsthand the importance of defending our freedoms. Canada's democracy is strong. My thanks to our national security agencies for protecting it. But I will just point something out, that this was happening in Canada during the 2021 election. We know that there were coordinated WeChat campaign attacks against Conservatives and against Erin O'Toole that potentially even swayed the results of that election in 2021. And there was no rapid response. There was no government pointing it out in real time saying, hey, we just caught the Chinese trying to do this. They just ignored it, let it happen, let the election play out. And then we found out about it later on in reports. So it's kind of interesting that when it comes to a Liberal, the federal bureaucracy is so willing to swing in and stop it in real time. And then also sort of the broader issue that the Chinese are actively trying to sway our elections. People on X and Canadians were also quick to point out that Mark Carney himself has some ties to communist China and Xi. So almost immediately after the hack story came out, this photo started circulating on X. Here is Stephen Taylor, a conservative activist, reminding everybody that Mark Carney had met with Chinese Premier Xi Jinping. So just for some more context, that meeting happened back in March of 2024, back when Mark Carney was the governor of the Bank of England, and they met during basically some kind of a CEO retreat. And so, not a great look, I think, for Mark Carney when he's trying to become a Canadian Prime Minister, trying to sound tough on China, trying to talk about how, he fully supports Chrystia Freeland as her campaign is being targeted by misinformation or disinformation from the Chinese.
Well, the real problem also with the last election, of course, was what happened with the competing candidates. Now, it's weird enough that Chrystia Freeland couldn't even get more votes in her own riding from her own EDA, from her own association. Her own association, her own writing gave more votes to Carney than to her. That was weird to start with, right? And then, of course, you had Ruby Dalla, who had a lot of common sense policies and actually probably could have redirected the Liberal Party back into some sanity and maybe actually even convince Canadians to actually vote for them instead of scaring them into vote for them like Carney and his gang did. But no, they saw her as a threat, an immediate threat, so they basically just took her money, her $350K that she raised, and then immediately removed her from the leadership race by accusing her of something or other that they couldn't really prove. Yeah. And then, of course, I don't know if she's been suing them or whatever, but it was kind of ridiculous what they did. Then, of course, they did the same thing to was it Anita Wright? No. I'm thinking about what's his name? Oh, I think I got him in the next panel here. Is he there? Is he there? Yeah, there he is, right there. Chandra Arya. Well, Chandra Arya, they just basically dropped him from the nominal role so that he could just step in. And then, of course, they accused him of something being involved with India or whatever. Never provided any proof, again. And then just went on, took a seat, took his writing over, took over his constituency offices, which of course he never opened at all. In fact, I don't think he's actually opened a constituency office. Now there is this office here. It says constituency office. This wasn't there a couple of weeks ago, so this is just recent. I think this happened actually after the fall session because I kept checking this almost every day during the fall session and there was nothing here. But it still says by appointment only. You know, Pierre Poilievre opened up 2 constituency offices the day after he was elected. This guy couldn't even be bothered to open one for over 6 months. Again, proving that the Liberals do not care about Canadians. They only care about themselves. They only care about the image that they carefully create in order to get reelected again, in order to hang on to power. Now, as it says here, he had not yet opened a dedicated constituency office, but apparently it's there now. It's not even sure whether or not this is a real one, but I mean, who has a constituency office that you can only go in by appointment? If you're representing your riding, shouldn't you just be allowed to have anyone? Oh, there's security concerns. Well, if you didn't piss so many people off, maybe you wouldn't be so worried about security concerns. But I guess that's what the far left does, right? They are so radical, they don't care who they piss off. They always create a crisis. And then if that crisis ends up having to deal with their own safety because they're acting like evil morons, well, then they blame everyone else, not their own actions, right? Typically, if you were pissing your neighbor off constantly every day and then your neighbor come over and gave you a threat and then you went to the cops and then the cops show up and they talk to everybody and then the cops come over to you and says, okay, we talked to your neighbor, I'm not going to threaten you again, but you got to stop goading him. Okay, whatever. And then the cops leave and then you go and you goad the neighbor again. Or you keep bugging the neighbor again. And the next thing you know, the neighbor reacts again, and then you call the cops, and then the cops talk to you and goes, well, we told you not to goad the neighbor. You're responsible here. You're doing this. But no, that's not, there's no political cops in Canada, right? There's just the voters. And the voters from one day to the next are so completely controlled by this organization, Qualified Canadian Journalism Organization. This is how they fund their media through our tax dollars, close to $30,000 per media person. That's just not the media persons you see on TV or you hear on the radio or you see on the YouTube. That's the entire organization. 27 to 30 grand a year for each person in these media organizations that qualify for this so that they can keep repeating the propaganda provided by the Liberal Party. Now, let's, what's the next big scandal? Oh, there's so many. Oh, yes. Let's go on to the next one. I feel like we just covered that one. Let's go to the next one. Well, we know there's this bank offshore. We know there's this corporation working above a bicycle shop on an island somewhere. We know that most Canadians do not have the ability to stack all their money in an offshore bank and not have to pay Canadian taxes. But, Mark Carney positioned himself well, didn't he? Let's go to the next video.
The Prime Minister stands to make tens of millions of dollars in future bonus pay from 3 investment funds that he registered in Bermuda and the Cayman Islands. So a simple question, how many other investments does the Prime Minister have in offshore tax havens?
Good question.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
That member knows very well that all members in this House must abide by some of the strictest, most stringent ethics rules in the world. The Prime Minister has not only met but exceeded his requirements under those ethics guidelines, Mr. Speaker, and he will continue to do so.
The Honourable Member for St. Albert, Sturgeon River.
Mr. Speaker, expert testimony reveals that the Prime Minister's company, Brookfield, is the biggest tax dodger in Canada, having avoided paying a staggering $6.5 billion in taxes in just 5 years. As chair of Brookfield, the Prime Minister registered 3 investment funds in Bermuda and the Cayman Islands in which he stands to make millions. So again, how much does the Prime Minister have in offshore tax havens?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, Canada lives under the most stringent and strong ethics guidelines for designated public office holders in the world. All members must comply with these requirements. These requirements are met very transparently, including the Prime Minister.
Blah, 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 blah. This guy lies like a rug, okay? He's like one of the slimiest guys during question period, and that's probably why he's party leader. Or, I mean, House party leader, floor party leader, whatever the hell he is. Can never get it right. Okay, let's go on to the next story. Next top 10. Well, we can see it every day on the streets, right? And now what's happened in Bondi in Australia, most Canadians are like, well, it's only a matter of time before it happens here, right? Because we've seen it on the streets already. When you have people parading on the streets, chanting from the river to the sea, they're calling for the extermination of the Jewish nation, of all the Jews that live in Israel. From the river to the sea, in Judea. It's crazy. But there they are, running back and forth. We've seen countless attacks on Jewish schools, synagogues, Jewish people, and constant calling for their deaths. Anti-Semitism run rampant in Canada. This was not like this for 2015. No. It was not. There is a reason why this is happening, and that's because the Liberals have caused it to happen. The Liberals were not in power before 2015, and this was not a problem. Now they are in power, and they have been for the past 10 years, and since October 7th, it seems that they have done everything they can to inculcate the message of hate and evil being propagated by the people who supported that kind of terrorism, continually allowing people on the streets to call the Israeli reaction to an act of murder, of suicidal murder, of insanity that Hamas created again, because it's in their manifesto, right? You can't change who they are. They are who they are. They say it often, over and over again. And what did the Canadian government do? Oh, hope they recognize the Palestinian state. So to recognize them, to say, oh, well, thank you so much for recognizing our acts of violence and terror, and thank you again. And in response to your thankness, well, we're going to export that kind of terrorism to your own nation, which is what they've been doing here in Canada. But they did in Bondi. It's kind of interesting that in Bondi, what did they say there? What was their first reaction? Just to, the right-wing violence. Yeah, okay. So, of course, the Liberal government has a very prominent Jew in there, Housefeather, and this back on September 1st, other MPs issued a call for action against the rise of anti-Semitism. And this was after a 71-year-old Joseph Roque, with aggravated assault, possession of dangerous weapon, stabbing someone. So, anti-Semitism. A Jewish woman in her 70s was stabbed in Ottawa grocery store. So, you know, there was a letter written, and you'd think that, you know, calling this violence out and saying, can we not just all live in peace and love? Do you think most Liberals would sign that? No. A void of moral courage at the very heart of the Liberal Party. 80% of the Liberal caucus didn't sign a letter denouncing anti-Semitism. The Liberals have a problem. Or do they? I don't think they think it's a problem. That's why it's there. That's why it's happening. That's why there's so many anti-Semites in the Liberal Party. Because it attracts them to them. It's funny because a lot of their policies in the Liberal Party since 2015 seem to have been aligning themselves in the very same way that the certain funny mustache man-led party in the 1930s in Germany treated their citizens, dealt with the Jews, right? Took away legally purchased firearms from their people, instituted a system of early life retirement for the useless eaters. In Canada, we call it MAID, Medical Assistance in Dying. It handed out meth to all its people in order to increase their productivity. Well, you know, Liberals went a different way. They decided to just provide dope available for everybody, make them laggards, so they could just bring in somebody to replace them. Whereas, you know, completely different, but there it is. So let's go on to the next top 10. Well, they're more troublesome bills than just Bill C2. I've covered them before on this channel. There are some videos on this channel that deal with the bills. In fact, if you go all the way back to an earlier video of Mark Carney, you can tell that from his plan that he wants to bring in, which deals with all the separate bills, they all have something in them. All these omnibus bills have something hidden inside that have to be dealt with in committee. They can't just provide a bill for what needs to be done. They always have to slip something in. Right? So their bill of dealing with bail issues basically just ripped off a bunch of ideas that the Conservatives had already put into a bill that they proposed first thing when it came back in the session in the fall that, you know, the Liberals and the Bloc Québécois voted down. And but what have the Liberals been mostly focused on? No, not helping Canadians, not making sure more people don't die from crime, not making sure that the economy is a little better. No, they haven't done that at all. No, their main concern in the bills right now has been to control what you say, to control what you think. You know, if you want to know if there's a psyop going on, just look at what is being silenced, what is being censored, and what they want to censor. Because if just the fact that that exists, you know that something is being manipulated, which means there's probably a psychological operation going on. Probably a psychological operation going on. So we'll wait for this panel to come up. Here we go. Bill C2, let's please ask your doctor if they provide you services. No warrant required. Let's let this doctor here, who's an MP, explain it to you.
Bill C2 includes a provision allowing the police to ask a doctor without a warrant if their services had ever been used by an individual. This is reprehensible. I am a physician. It frankly offends me, not just as a Canadian, not just as a person, but it offends my whole profession. It violates not just our Charter of Rights, but the Hippocratic Oath. If a member opposite or their child went to see a doctor who specializes in addictions, or mental health, or sexually transmitted diseases, or reproductive medicine, on what possible planet would they think it was appropriate for the police to ask that physician to disclose their child as a client?
If you want to know more bills are having some issues with passing through committee, then I suggest you start watching the committees or start watching other videos of people who watch the committees and make the videos shorter so you don't have to sit through a whole committee. Let's go to our next top 10. Well, like I was ranting at the beginning, $1 trillion in debt, $10 million an hour in debt charges, and they want to add to it. Canadians are right to be worried. This isn't just another budget, says Wealth Moose here. First time in 30 years, Ottawa is hiding spending behind accounting tricks, reclassifying operating costs as investments, ignoring parliamentary budget officer warnings on sustainability, handing future generations a bill they will never approve, that they would have never approved of. This isn't leadership, it's abandonment. They are completely racking up their credit cards. I don't think the Liberals expected to win the last election, honestly. I think they were all quite just surprised that there was a sudden spike in polls after Carney got selected. He goes, oh, you might have another shot at stealing for another 4 years. And now they are stealing like there's no tomorrow. No accountability whatsoever, no ethics, no morals. And when you create a budget that is basically completely devoid of paying for itself whatsoever, and you continue to spend like drunken monkeys on meth, just sending money out the door constantly. Oh, we need some money for gender rights across the pond. Let's give you some money for that. Oh, we need to create yet a fourth department in order to get something built in Canada. Let's hire somebody for $500,000. Oh, and let's make him one of Carney's friends. Yes. It's just, it never stops with these people. Never stops at all. I just don't want to make sure I get into the next story here. Oh, that is the next story. Well, let's go on to the next top 10, which is the last top 10. There we go. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong scandal. Mark Carney was indeed on the board of directors of Rito Hall Charity, and he okayed tax credits for corporations whose donations were used to pay federal contractors on public works. The names on the board reads like a list of auto insiders. There's a list by a post by Tom Quick in there, and you've got all these names here. You can recognize a few of them here, but it's pay for play. More pay for play. Sorry, but that was the wrong ethics breach. There we go. Carney hasn't disclosed 95% of Brookfield's portfolio companies tied to the value of stock option. Told you so.
Would submit that it is of material interest. Canadians do deserve the right to know what these other 1,900 companies are, 95% of which are not subject to the ethics screen. So again, will you undertake to provide that list?
Many of those would have no ties to Canada.
So the answer is no. Is that your answer?
I will take it away.
You'll take that under advisement?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bieber, you stated earlier that there are...
There's a bit of a moment there. Is there another panel? Yes, we do right here. Canada shouldn't have a PM who can profit from his own decisions. When his investments are tied to Brookfield, every call raises questions. Mr. Carney's future compensation is tied to success of Brookfield, says the ethics commissioner. So why won't he sell? In fact, during the election, prior to April 28th, Carney told Canada Carney told Canadians after he was asked, "What do you own?" "Oh, cash and properties." That's what he told us. Cash and properties. Turns out that's a lie. A complete lie. In fact, he's invested up to the hilt. All kinds of businesses, all across the board, and practically every policy decision that he's been making has been enriching himself and his friends, who are all invested in the same companies. The most unethical, immoral, corporate raider prime minister we've ever had in the history of Canada. Well, thank you all for coming out to our clunky show, our first in between the naps. And oh, look, we have a few comments before I go. Let's see. There are 500,000 job vacancies in Canada, so please get a job and improve your life. Oh, well, you see, I had a job. I had a job in the Canadian Armed Forces for 38 years, actually. I planned to do 2 more years at that point, actually, to retire after 40 years. Nice roundabout thing. Yeah, I made some mistakes in my past, and I had a full plan set out. After those 40 years, I would have been ready to retire. And I'd also achieved the career goal that I had always wanted. I was the senior air maintenance supervisor in the Royal Canadian Air Force. This kind of person does interviews through your corporate knowledge, and you basically recommend and give authorizations for certification to work on aircraft. Very involved in the aircraft industry. So I had a job. And then along came the Liberal Party and turned me, a veteran of 4 tours, into a second-class citizen. At the time, with 36 years of service, I was turned into a second-class citizen for refusing an experimental messenger RNA gene therapy rebranded as a vaccine without informed consent. And as it turns out, I did the right choice because my members, my comrades who were coerced into taking it, who got injured, have been told that they won't recognize their vaccine injury. They have to go to the vaccine injury support program to get help, which they're not qualified for because it's beyond the time limit. Veterans Affairs won't recognize their vaccine injuries. And of course, neither the military, because they've been ordered. They're under orders not to talk about it. Oh, you might cause vaccine hesitancy. Don't say anything about it. And of course, the military still requires 3 jabs. 3 jabs. What they don't tell you is like they lost about 10% of the armed forces. People quit. They were not going to be subjected to this type of coercion, this violation of the Nuremberg Code of Ethics. So they left. And now you have a bunch of fat, lazy fucks left behind in the military. Yeah. Not all of them, mind you, but I see them downtown. I live next to the base. And they're not looking healthy. The majority of them. We've seen footage online last time they were up parading. They can't even march in step. The military has been completely destroyed. So yeah, when you're telling me I should get a job to improve my life, I worked. I worked very hard in my life. I worked to defend this nation, and I was recompensed by turned into a second-class citizen. That's right. And then, of course, all my comrades who got injured to the point where they couldn't keep their job, they got released from the military, and they're shit out of luck. They can't certainly apply for those 500,000 job vacancies you're talking about. Now, if Canada actually had 500,000 job vacancies, then our unemployment wouldn't be up that high. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the job stats that the Liberals do put out recently that they talked about, and I did a video on this as well, the majority of the jobs that they put in are only seasonal, part-time because of the Christmas rush, and they've lost far more full-time than these part-times can make up. And even if you do manage to get a full-time job, if you're in the wrong part of the country, you can't even afford to live on one job, let alone 2. You got professionals out in BC sleeping in their cars because they can't afford a place to live on their full job. So it doesn't matter really if you got a good job. Right now, people are just surviving and just slowly watching the value of our dollar erode as everything keeps getting more and more expensive. Let's see what's the next comment here. I watched committee. This disgusting the way the Liberal controllers abuse them. Well, it all comes down to the chair. You have some good chairs and you have some bad chairs. And in my experience, the majority of the bad chairs are Liberals because they're in there with an agenda and they're very biased. Not all of them. Some Liberal chairs are actually rather good. They act like a complete objective Liberal chair. It's almost like they've actually been in a committee before. So Dominic Barton, so disgusting. Oh, yeah, he is. And Carney was advising Trudeau, if you're Muslim and immigrant to Canada, you can get 60K a year. Well, I think it's more like 89K a year, thereabouts. I think that was the top end. But definitely, that's also a problem we've been seeing in the UK recently. Because you've got veterans from the Falklands War trying to get a hip replacement, and they keep being delayed and denied 6 months, 8 months. And down the hall, they can see people coming into their country being given free medical care, free dental care, free eye care, while this veteran who fought in the Falklands War can't even get help from his own country. Now, of course, we're seeing the same things pretty well here in Canada. Maybe not as bad now because the stats are showing that Canadians aren't the only ones that are fleeing Canada. In fact, a lot of the migrants who come in have been discovering that they've been sold a bill of goods by the Liberals. Like, oh, this place is a shithole. At least I can afford to live back in my third world country, but now I'm coming to this first world country that's slowly trying to turn itself into a second, third world country that is too expensive to live in. So it's run by a bunch of climate crazies and other criminals. Comments? It's in the comment there. And we'll see you tomorrow with another show. Today was the top 10 of Carney. I think tomorrow will be a top 10 of the Liberals. All the bad stuff they've done since 2015, right up until he come up. And I think most of that list seems to be associated with a former part-time drama teacher. Could be wrong, though. All right, thank you all for coming out. We will see you next time. I can just bring this up here. Like, share, subscribe. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Rodriguez is expected to resign as leader of the Quebec Liberal Party, the Parti Québécois, are leading the polls there. Do you have any plans to maybe take over his role and save the country from a referendum?
No, that I have a lot of things on my plate to build the strongest economy in the G7.
If the Conservatives want the truth, we'll tell them the truth.
Speech yesterday from the Prime Minister really freaked these Conservatives out because they saw the ambition in that speech. And not only did they see it in that speech today, as the Prime Minister stood with the Premier investing in new nuclear to ensure the jobs of today and the future, they know that the youth need.
The only thing that's revolting are those answers.
Speaker, we will take no lessons from these Conservatives. Trust me on that.
The minister didn't write the Prime Minister's speech yesterday because it wouldn't have bored and depressed to tears.
It's really hard to follow, isn't it, Mr. Speaker?
All of those poor students stuck in that room. There he spoke about how they would have to sacrifice more and that it would take time to reverse all of the misery that has built up over the last 10 years. Mr. Speaker, young people want to have homes. They want to have jobs. They want to have hope. They want a budget that is affordable so they can have a life that is affordable. Will the Prime Minister introduce that budget so that Canadians can restore the promise of their country?
And we decide what comes next.
Know that this government has their back and we will continue to do it. There's going to be a powerful statement for the young people of Canada.
Deficits are driving inflation. The more Liberals spend, the more it costs Canadians at the grocery store. 25% of Canadians are using food banks because they can't afford to eat. So when will the Prime Minister finally get his inflationary deficits under control so Canadians can put food on the table?
Mr. Speaker, Conservative members pretend to care about food insecurity, but then they call feeding children
Now, Mr. Speaker, what's garbage was that answer?
Did the Prime Minister see the ad before it went out?
Hey, of course there are too many people living in poverty in Canada, but there are significant initiatives being put in place by this government.
Being serious means being honest.
Mr. Speaker, the grand reveal has been
Canada's
made.
economy is in fact growing, Mr. Speaker.
Christmas time. Will he do the right thing, get rid of this tax so Canadians can eat?
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker.